Hello. If you are here today, you are joining us at a later time um, to watch me talk to you all about using a database in the Kansas City Public Library digital catalog called A to Z databases for your local market assessment. This virtual program is for small businesses and entrepreneurs who are just getting started, taking the reins to get information to assess a local market for viability. My name is Hadiza Saadu. I am the Small Business and Nonprofit Specialist with the Kansas City Public Library. Now let's get into some learning objectives. Got 5 learning objectives for our time today. First, we're going to introduce questions that can help you guide your market research. Next, we're going to cover Porter's 5 forces, just a brief overview, as well as where you can find a template to start to do a Porter's 5 forces analysis for yourself. The next learning objective is ultimately to understand how to access A to Z databases from the KC Library Digital Catalog. And kind of joined along with that is to understand the purpose of A to Z databases, what you can use it for. And then within the context of market assessment, we're going to be examining A to Z databases to determine kind of a baseline what to look for so that you can get closer to your answers as far as your market research questions go. All right, let's get into it. So, before you begin before you embark on your journey to really understand your local market, I've come up with 4 questions that I think can be helpful to help you anchor your thinking and therefore guide what you're doing as far as conducting a search. So some things to think about. First, who are the local players in your industry? And who should you compare yourself to? So, as an entrepreneur, as a small business, whether you are already operating or you're just getting ready to start operating, or you've determined for whatever reason you do need to conduct an analysis of your local market, it's always helpful as far as your aspirations go to think about who are the other players, um, and who should you aspire to be like? Who is successful in your industry, in your sphere? Next question, and this is a question that will start off as a hypothetical and get more and more real as you collect more and more information. The question is, how much interest or demand is there for my product or service? This is a question that's really important because it's going to help you determine whatever the industry is, how much work you need to do to claim a stake within the local demand or to create the demand that you desire to be successful in the industry of your choice. The next question, this is the more numbers, mathy type question, but I do think it's important to think about is what is the average or median revenue for players in my local industry? So as I'm sure anybody tuning in is aware, and if you're not aware, it's okay. Average and median are not the same thing. These are 2 different indicators. It's kind of up to you to decide what is the more robust figure for me to look at if I'm looking at numbers that can be indicators for an industry. So when thinking about success of other players in an industry, in a local industry, revenue can be a determinant there, revenue along with profit. So when looking at revenue numbers, it's good to kind of get a baseline, like what is the average revenue that um, a business within this industry can expect to get. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of factors that are going to tell you different things, like you can be in the same industry and have a very small business compared to a very large business. So you want to make sure that you're um, kind of segmenting the industry based off of what your aspirations are, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to compare uh, an average revenue for huge corporations within industry and compare that to a smaller scale operation. So just something to consider. Um, Last but not least, I think another question that can help as far as anchoring your approach is to think about what are the forces that are at play that affect every player in a local industry. And so that's kind of a lead in into our next topic, which is, oh, sorry, I jumped the gun. We will get to Porter's five forces. But before we get to Porter's five forces, I kind of want to put a little bit more, I don't know if context is the right word, but as far as kind of giving you something to latch on to take the more hypothetical into something more realistic, let's start to imagine things as if we are about to enter the local restaurant industry. Um, and we're going to say that our aspirations are to open up a mom and pop type restaurants with American cuisine. So, given that example, let's think through this slide here. This is the situation where we've just begun just ideating. What would it be like to open an American cuisine restaurant in Kansas City? I don't know the details yet about my aspirations with that. The idea is something that I've been kind of thinking about, and I don't really have that much information to go off of other than, oh, I think it would be cool, and I think I have the capital required to open up a restaurant, and I'm thinking American cuisine. Why not? So I'm not sure yet about the specifics of my restaurant business idea other than the cuisine. Um, and I can still find information in A to Z databases to help me determine if it makes sense for me to continue spending time developing that business idea. So within the restaurant industry, and I know that I've kind of already primed this by saying I want to open up I think it would be cool to open up a restaurant that serves American cuisine. So even if I am not sure about the cuisine, I just know I want to be a player in the KC restaurant industry. First question to consider, what type of cuisine? So this is to say that even if you don't know the type of cuisine, you can still browse around and determine a little bit about the restaurant industry if you're so curious to do that. But in this situation, I do have a little bit of specificity in that I have decided that it would make sense to maybe explore American cuisine. So beyond the type of cuisine, and I'm ready to explore American cuisine in Kansas City. Um, the next thing to really think about, in my opinion, is what channels would I, as a restaurant owner or co-owner, want to take to be able to reach customers who are interested in American cuisine? Do I want to do something that involves online ordering? Do I want to do something that involves takeout? Probably. Do I want to take advantage of any ghost kitchens that are in Kansas City to save on costs? Do I want to open up a food truck? Or maybe I want to try a combination of different ideas. Maybe I want to do some pop-up type events attached to something maybe that's already established. I'm just putting this in here and pointing it out to let you know that it absolutely pays off to spend the time up front to think about what channels should I take advantage of, because that's going to help you kind of refine your positioning within the local restaurant industry. Next, geographic locations. So this is pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to necessarily explain what this is. But yeah, different locations in Kansas City are going to cater to the hyper localized environment. So you'll definitely want to consider where you want to open up if you are serious about pursuing um, the restaurant industry in Kansas City. And last but not least, and I think this kind of goes along with channels, but you want to think about what type of restaurant you're aspiring for. If you're already thinking about opening up a franchise of an existing chain, then you've already thought through a lot of things. Um, so if you've already thought that route and that's the route you're going, then you've thought through again, you've thought through a lot of things, and you're probably not going to play directly in competition with any so-called mom and pop type restaurants. But again, this is just something to consider. Maybe there are multiple options that you want to explore. I am using a pure hypothetical here. But just know, again, there are different sizes of restaurants. There's different types of restaurants that exist. And technically, when we're thinking about demand for dining or eating food that is not food that an individual prepares themselves, if that is how you're going to define restaurant or dining or takeout or anything like that, then you want to consider at the very least what is going to be the difference in perception of the public, of the potential customer base between a franchise that already has a lot of brand recognition uh, versus a mom and pop that isn't going to already have the baked in type of brand percep or brand recognition once it opens. All right. Now we're ready to talk about Porter's five forces. So I'm going to be very brief with this. And I'm hopeful that as we are anchoring this with the example of the local restaurant industry, we can start to think of examples on our own about that kind of coincide to each of these different forces. So first force here that you see on the screen is competitive rivalry. If you are an entrepreneur in Kansas City, you already know that Kansas City at large is a very competitive environment. There's a lot of ways you can kind of just define this. But no matter what the industry is, Kansas City is an environment where you have to be on your game. You have to know what type of value you're offering, how you stand out, so that you're not swallowed up by the forces of competition. Whether you are a competitive person as an individual or not, if you're going into business or you're existing in business, you do have to think about at the very minimum the competitive environment so that you can assess how much energy you want to spend as a business directly competing with the other players in the industry. So this is where if you are considering maybe a lesser known cuisine, this is where you can stand out by the product itself alone. So if you're the type that isn't super big on self-promotion or marketing to get people's attention, that type of thing, this is the time to consider what type of cuisine do I want. This is your opportunity then to really consider, okay, given the fierce competition, what are some cuisines that are not necessarily well represented in this city? Um, and if they're not that well represented, where are the ones that currently exist within that cuisine? Okay, are they located in a certain area? Are they located kind of all over the place? Where can I stand out that is going to attract people without me having to do too much other than work on the product itself and delivering that product? Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about competitive rivalry. The next forces that you're definitely going to want to consider, and these all fall kind of within the category or the broader, not maybe category is not the right word, but the broader context of competition um, is we've got first or second, bargaining power of suppliers. So in the restaurant industry, you're going to have suppliers. Whether you are going to open a dine-in restaurant, something that is solely uh, using a ghost kitchen so that people can do mobile orders, or it's some sort of hybrid, you are going to really want to understand how much power suppliers who kind of can make or break your business operations, you want to know how much power they have over the industry. And what that really means is how much power do suppliers have to set the price? Do you have the power to negotiate? That's the biggest kind of takeaway from Porter's Five Forces is the word negotiation. Do you have the power to negotiate for a more favorable price from suppliers? Next thing, again, considering the word negotiation, what is the bargaining power of buyers? So buyers are the people who are purchasing an experience from your restaurant, whether it's a dine-in experience, whether it's a digital experience. And I'm saying experience because we're kind of in a digital age, and a lot of people love to share their maybe I don't know if mundane is the right word, but they love to share their life experiences online. So it's not just that you are opening up a restaurant. You're opening up an opportunity for someone to have a different experience. So in that, how much power does the experience haver hold over the restaurant or your potential restaurant as far as setting the price? And this is where, if you are operating in a space where it's American cuisine, you're definitely going to want to compare and contrast pricing um, for common menu items, or common or comparable menu items. And then the further things that you'll want to consider um, is, okay, if I'm comparing my ideals as far as opening up a restaurant goes in the American cuisine category, if I'm comparing my ideals for success to another restaurant, again, this is where we have to consider, are my ideals congruent with the profile of a potential competitor that I'm looking at here? Do I want to be the same size as a competitor that I'm looking at? Um, do I want to have the same kind of revenue that a competitor has? And again, these factors that I'm naming are not just the sole factor that I'm naming. There's a lot of other variables that go into it. Um, but we don't have time to get into that level of nuance. This is again just to try to illustrate that the customer has power. And so what you are assessing when you're examining bargaining power of buyers is you're trying to determine how much power as a collective group do customers who purchase food outside of their house, purchase food that's already prepared outside of their house, how much power do they have to set the price? All right. Fourth force is called the threat of substitution. So this is where it's going to be important to be clear about what is a substitute for your product. In the restaurant category, you I think it makes sense to think of things from the perspective of a customer. So say I'm a customer who is pressed for time, but I've got a lot of excess cash and I just want to pick something up quick before I go home from work so I don't have to cook when I'm at home. In this case, a substitute for prepared food outside of the home can be a very broad definition. If I'm somebody who knows that I want to spend up to $30 on prepared food. I have different choices. I could order that food to come to my home. I could go to somewhere that's convenient. I could go to a place that I already have in mind. Um, but this is just to, again, illustrate what does it mean to have a substitute? So again, if I'm a customer that just wants to spend up to $30 on a prepared meal, then the definition of substitute is quite broad. But maybe I am a customer who is planning a friend's get together 4 weeks out, and we know that we all love American cuisine, and we know that we want to meet up on a certain date. At that point, then we're talking about more intentional planning. Um, and maybe we're also talking about a higher end dining experience, if that makes sense. So in that case, then we're looking at the segment of the restaurant industry that is serving American cuisine and is serving American cuisine in more of the fine dining category. So in that case, then I'm not somebody that's considering McDonald's as a substitute for the type of American cuisine dining experience that I want to have with my friends 4 weeks out. So hopefully my babbling right there explains what the threat of substitution looks like. And if not, I will definitely be sharing a link to where you can get some more context for how to consider Porter's five forces. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the last force here, which is the force of the threat of new entrants. This is so interesting. Um, so this is a powerful position to be in any industry. Um, what does it mean to have a new player in a local industry? If the competition is fierce, then a new player could be a huge threat to everybody in the industry, especially if that new entrant, new threat, is somebody that is highly competitive on a very specific thing. So that's just something to consider. This is something also to kind of consider with the notion of hmm, first mover advantage, which isn't necessarily the one-to-one here. But this is kind of hammering in on what is it that's going to make you unique, even if you're in a sub industry within a larger industry that has a lot of players. What is it about you that's going to make you a threatening presence to the existing players? So you want to consider how the threat of a new entrant, you want to consider how you can harness that positionality to your advantage. As far as the other four forces, the threat of new entrants, if you're new to a specific industry, and in this case, if you're new to the restaurant industry, that is the one force that you have the most control over. So definitely consider always how you stand out. Okay. So I said that I was going to share some links to Porter's five forces, right? Okay. So we've talked a little, maybe a lot about Porter's five forces. Um, this is a screenshot of Porter's five forces in a tool called Gale Business Plan Builder that you can access through the Kansas City Public Library digital catalog. I've got a link attached right here. So for those of you who are watching, absolutely feel free to reach out if you'd like this PDF so that you can have the link. Otherwise, be advised that you can access this through the digital catalog if you do an A to Z search, or if you click on the A to Z list and you go to G, it will come up on your screen. Also under G is Gale Business Entrepreneurship. Gale Business Entrepreneurship is a resource for learning. There's a glossary of terms, and then you can also conduct searches that will yield results that contain examples of the term that you are searching for. And so those examples come in the form of sample business plans um, and more in-depth articles that kind of get into the nuts and bolts of whatever term it is that you're searching. And in this case, I would recommend searching Porter's Five Forces analysis. All right. Now we're finally going to get into a live demonstration of taking a stab at starting to assess a local market. And the tool, again, that we are going to use is called AtoZdatabases. So here is just a screenshot of what we're going to be looking at as we embark on our available out there. So I'm going to minimize my screen very briefly, and I'm going to stop sharing. That way you don't see what I'm doing when I have to maneuver between screens. Okay. So now we are in the Kansas City Public Library digital catalog. We are in the catalog entry AtoZdatabases. And so to get here, I'll go a little bit backwards. So you'll see here, this is the URL. This is just for folks that are not familiar with the website. Um, you'll go to the library homepage, and then lifelong learning is where you want to focus your attention on. And I always recommend, I mean, we do have a web page that covers kind of a guide to the business and entrepreneurship related digital resources in the catalog, and you can explore those through the business and entrepreneurship page. I like to direct people to the digital resources A to Z, just so that folks can, if they're not already, they can get a little bit more familiar with the other resources in the catalog alphabetically. So where we're going again is the tool called AtoZdatabases that we just saw the catalog entry for, and we're going to see it again. So you'll click on read more anytime that you are ready to access something from the digital catalog. And please note that if you are going to use this database from any location outside of the library, you're going to need your library card. So that means either having the physical card so that you can put in your library card number that starts with 1000 and then your corresponding PIN code that you have jotted down somewhere or memorized in your head. Um, or having that information handy so that you can put it in. Because what it's going to do is after you click on Access Now outside of the library, then it'll take you to a page to authenticate, and it needs your library card credentials. Um, I'm inside the library, so I'm not going to be asked to authenticate. And now we're inside. Hello. Welcome to AtoZdatabases. So there's several different search functions. Um, Overall, what is AtoZdatabases used for? So let's just take a look at what they're saying here. So this is the ultimate free search tool for people who are looking to find a business. There are over 15 million businesses that are listed aggregately on AtoZdatabases. This is also a tool that job seekers can use to find job openings. They've got access to over 7 million high-paying jobs, as is advertised here on their landing bar. You can also use this tool to generate mailing lists and sales leads. And that's something that if you'd like to, we can work together one-on-one, and I'll make sure that you know how to find the page to schedule an automatic meeting with me at the end. Um, last but not least, on the other side, you can find specific people if you want to do a resident search. That is not a function that I use very often with people, um, but just know that it is there. You can also find executives within the business corresponding search functions. Okay. So if you are embarking on market research to open up a new restaurant in Kansas City, and you know that you want to explore what's going on within the American cuisine category of the restaurant industry in Kansas City, maybe you already have a restaurant name in mind that you want to find more information of. If that's the case, it might make sense to type that business name in the find a business or executive search here. So let's see if I can think of one right off the top of my head. I'm blanking. I should have come up with an example for this particular portion, but let's think of this. Let's just go with Texas Roadhouse. I know that that is American cuisine, and see what we can find. I'm not specifying the city here. This is just to show what you can find if you know the name of a specific business, in this case, a specific type of restaurant that you want to find information for. So I know that Texas Roadhouse is a franchise type of restaurant. Um, when I type in Texas Roadhouse with no specification of the location, I get 619 total results that span over 25 pages. Um, in this case, I have my search results showing 25 results per page. I can expand that to 100 results per page and make going through the search results a little bit different. I don't know if more or less wieldy makes sense. Um, but I do want to just point out that the first result that comes up is the Texas Roadhouse Inc. headquarters. So that again kind of corresponds to how Texas Roadhouse is a franchise here. So maybe I want to learn more about the headquarter restaurant or the headquarter location. So I'm clicking on that, and once this loads, we will be able to see what information AtoZdatabases has on the Texas Roadhouse headquarters. Okay, so we've got the business name, we've got the physical address, a phone number, as well as a key executive name and title here. So that would be Mr. Gerald Morgan, who is the CEO. We've got um, other forms of information here, which include what's the main line of business. So here we see that this headquarters location is focused on restaurant management. Industry profile. So these are the corresponding industry codes that the business is registered under. So we see that the Texas Roadhouse headquarters has industry codes corresponding to restaurant management, as far as the SIC version, management consulting, franchising, corporation organizing consultants, and then the other type of industry codes are NAICS codes. We've got office administration, administrative services, administrative management, and general management consulting services, lessors of non-financial and tangible assets. So all of these codes and corresponding descriptions are telling us, again, this is the headquarters. We already know that by the name, but we know that the headquarters isn't actually doing anything related to um, the food business operations itself. So, unless I want to open up a new corporation that can eventually become a franchiser, um, maybe it doesn't make sense to compare my aspirations to the Texas Roadhouse Inc. headquarters, but it does give us some information about what does the headquarters, what is the relationship between the headquarter location of Texas Roadhouse and franchising Texas Roadhouses all across the nation. Okay, so they do restaurant management, so they're helping the franchisees with restaurant management. They're helping with consulting services, corporation organizing. All right. So that's just a kind of way to kind of think through what you're looking at here. I'm going to stop there because I would like to look at our local results that can help us with our exploratory research that can help us start to assess the market locally here in Kansas City. So I'm going to go ahead and revise my search. Now we're back again to the home page. I'm going to just clear out the find a business or executive search here. And then scroll down here to the bottom. And we're going to go to my favorite search, which is called 65 million businesses and executives. So this section here, both the left-hand side and the right-hand side, these are um, these are search query sources, I guess, that you can use to generate mailing lists over time. That is not the focus of today's program, but just know that whenever you do conduct a search, you yield a bunch of results, you can export those search results and basically generate a mailing list that can later turn into a client relation management system if you so desire. That's just something to throw out there. So we're going to go into the 65 million businesses and executives function here. And I don't mean to go backwards, but I should have shouted out the specific industry code for the local restaurant industry. If I can find it. Okay. So I'm going to just say the code and hopefully you jotted it down. If not, no worries. So as far as the restaurant industry goes, the SIC code is 5812. So I'll let you know that I'm not sure right now if you can see my um, PowerPoint screen. Oh, you cannot. Good. Okay. So let's just double down again. Keep it in your head that the corresponding industry code for the restaurant industry as far as SIC codes go, is 5812. That is the broadest definition of the restaurant industry that you can muster. The corresponding code is 5812. So we're going to look a little bit deeper as to how SIC and also NAICS codes show up. Okay, so let's look at our search terms here. So the left-hand side here are all variables that you can mark to refine your search. Right now, we don't really have any search terms, so AtoZdatabases is basically like, hey, give us some prompts. So let's start off with the geography here. We're going to start off by city. I'm just going to say Kansas City, but first we're going to determine that this is Kansas City, Missouri. Maybe we wanted to do the metro area. We could have also selected metro area, and then we can have an option to look at Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri at the same time. But for now, we're just going to look at Missouri. So we're looking at, I'm going to select Missouri there, and then we're going to filter by. And in this filter by, we're filtering by city. So I can go ahead and just type Kansas City, and it will show up. If I want to, I can include North Kansas City, so I might as well just do that. So far what we've got in our search terms are, as far as geography goes, the state of Missouri with selected cities Kansas City, Missouri, and North Kansas City, Missouri. I'm going to leave it at that. If I wanted to exclude anything, I could go ahead and do that with these exclusions. I'll let you know that that is not a function that I use very often. Um, and I'll also be honest and say I don't remember the last time I've used that with a patron. And I've used this tool quite a bit. The next section here, so that's all to say, maybe you don't need to pay that much attention to it. So the next section that we're looking at is the keyword slash business type. So what this is getting at is the industry. So A to Z databases doesn't expect you to have the SIC code top of mind. But again, we're focused on restaurants here. Can you guess why I might have chosen the example restaurants? In this case, we're gonna go ahead and just type restaurants and see what comes up. I always highly recommend going through what comes up in the select keyword slash business types window right here when I go ahead and type, or when you go ahead and type the keyword. Um, so remember, restaurants as a whole fall under the SIC code 5812. That's the broad category. When we get into the sub industries, that we see those covered with the last three digits of the code. So we can see that um, American restaurants falls under 5812015. And then there's a whole host of other cuisines that are listed, and then also access types. So we see that uh, we've got different cuisines, and then finally we see a drive-in restaurant here. And then a family dining restaurant here, fast food restaurant, food delivery restaurant. So this, hopefully, if you're looking at this and spending time with this, it can start to sink in that you can sort of see some patterns that arise as far as how different aspects of the industry are coded within the SIC framework. You can also do this. Mm, I take back what I was about to say. So A to Z databases only shows you the SIC code when you do a keyword search. If you happen to already know the NAICS codes, you can paste those into an NAICS code window here if you'd like. And you could also do the same with the SIC codes if you have those. But I highly recommend using the keyword search to get a little bit more familiar with how the industry at large and in its subsets gets coded. You can also do this by going through the major industry group. I kind of call this approach to searching, the major industry group one, a bit of a um, I don't want to say rabbit chase, but it kind of is. So you're going to start with the most broad category of industry. So the restaurant industry is technically a sub-industry of a larger industry. And that might be retail and it might be wholesale. But that's something for you to explore later. Since we don't have so much time, let's go ahead and continue this search here. Um, so we've selected Missouri. We have not selected a sub-industry yet. Let's go ahead and select American restaurants here. And this should update, but if it doesn't, let's force that update for the count. Okay, so we had a large number that was 18,000 something, and now I've updated the count, and based off of this query, which is showing for Kansas City and North Kansas City, Missouri, with the American restaurant category with SAI, or sorry, with with SIC code 5812015, we have a total of 192 search results. So let's go ahead and look at what some of these search results are showing us. If it will load. This is taking quite some time. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and refresh that. Or let's go back. Let's just revise the search. Okay, I'm gonna click this again and hopefully it goes through. Without a problem. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at page one, records per page, 25. I'm gonna go ahead and expand that to 100 records per page so that we can just kind of see more on one page. And now we've only got 2 pages of results. So just basic searches or basic scanning. We're seeing a Constantino's Food Market, which is a grocery store. Then we see Go Chicken Go headquarters, which I believe is a franchise. I believe Go Chicken Go is a franchise. Not a huge franchise, but um, since it's got an HQ, let's go ahead and assume that they have a franchise model. Could explore more to see. Um, Roselle Court, Cracker Barrel Old Country Store, Hooters, Nick and Jake's Steak and Shake. So we're seeing a wide variety already. Um, let's go ahead and just take a look at Charlie Hooper's, which is a local restaurant here, I believe. I don't know if it's a franchise. I'll admit I don't know these things off the top of my head. But my guess is that it's not because it's Charlie Hooper's Brookside Bar and the business name is Charlie Hooper's. So let's look more detailed. So we've got the 5812 category, restaurants. Then they also serve alcohol, 5813. Um, and then American restaurants, you see exactly how the SIC code is shown, which there's a dash between the main industry and then the sub industry here. Um, and then the same thing for the alcoholic beverage industry as well. Then we see the corresponding NAICS codes. One thing that I really want to point out here, and this is, we kind of meandered for me to get to the ultimate point here with A to Z databases. In addition to organizing the search results with some of the functions that A to Z has, and we can go through that in just a second, the thing that I really, really want anybody who's watching, especially up till now, to pay attention to is how A to Z compiles information about area competitors and then nearby businesses. This is a shortcut for you to help you assess the competition. So going back to that first force, the competitive rivalry, and we know that the restaurant business has low profit margins, and therefore that creates fierce competition. Being able to see a list of area competitors for an existing player in a local industry helps us by um, giving us kind of on a silver platter names of similar in size, similar in industry, similar in revenue, uh, businesses that can help us put names into maybe a map that we are creating to assess the market. So we see here the names of area competitors, Chuck Naylor, Cease Desist, Shots by Miko, Bobby Baker's Lounge, Red Rose Massage. So when I just read those names out, some of them may not be restaurant players, but A to Z has identified them as competitors. So what are they competing on? People's buying power. So people's recreational ideation. Sorry. That was a weird way to say people's leisure time. What are people going to do in their free time? Right? That might be what they're identifying is how these competitors are competing. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the ones that are definitely competing within the industry itself, because um, that's the biggest way to actually compare yourself. So we see Dodson's Bar and Commons. So this is probably a good one to look at as far as comparing one-to-one restaurant and or drinking establishment in this case. Another one that we should look at is probably 901 Igloo Bar. Also probably Bobby Baker's Lounge. So local hangouts. Maybe this is dive bar situation here. But this is again, all of what I'm saying here, everything that I'm doing is just helping, is just to an attempt to try to help you frame the way that you approach finding this information and how to kind of continuously think through, um, am I getting closer to figuring out if this makes sense for me, or am I getting more confused? Because we want clarity always. Um, Other things to compare my restaurant aspirations to if I want to model myself after Charlie Hooper's success in the restaurants and alcohol beverage industries. Let's look at the revenue trend. So since 2021, Charlie Hooper's has been steadily going up with a dip between 2021 and 2022. I feel like a lot can be explained from the pandemic, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with that. A lot of restaurants had to seriously pivot and change the way they did operations. And a lot was still being figured out between 2021 and 2022, and a lot of restaurants took a hit. So I'm sure Charlie Hooper was one of those businesses. After 2022, they figured out how to adjust um, and then grow their revenue beyond even what they made in 2021. And that revenue trend is still going up, as evidenced from the revenue from 2024. Um, but to kind of get even more of a indication of where they're headed, I like to look at the employee trend. If a company is showing a steady trend of hiring more employees, it means that they are confident in their revenue, being able to cover all of their expenses and generate enough profit for them to continuously expand as far as employees delivering the service to customers. So if that's what you're trying to be as a restaurant, I definitely think that Charlie Hooper's within the American restaurant cuisine in Kansas City, on the dine-in um, aspect of the industry where people can dine in at a place. If I'm trying to model my success after somebody, I think Charlie Hooper's makes sense, but we want to also see pricing, right? So maybe we haven't decided if we want to be a fine dining establishment. Let's see what Charlie Hooper's is looking like as far as their pricing and who they are trying to attract into their doors. So we're on the website here, which was already linked through AtoZdatabases, and let's take a look at some of their offerings here that are listed here on this menu bar. They've got their menu shown. They've got an online ordering situation going on. They've got gift cards. That's always something to take advantage of. A little bit about them, events that they host, their party space as well, and then they also offer catering, and they've got job openings. So looks like they're in a position of growth right now. Then they've also got their locations listed. They are success stations. Let's look at where they're located in Kansas City. Just get a sense of what they have determined makes sense to offer American dining. So they've got 63rd Street, and then it looks like they've got another business that maybe this is we don't know, but maybe this is a franchise, or maybe they're just, who knows how they are connected. Maybe they're under the same um, business entity, which I have not checked their records in the Secretary of State, but that's something that you can absolutely take a look at. Their other location is Lou's Grill and Bar, located in um, the Westport neighborhood. Or no, not the Westport neighborhood. I am sorry about that. In the Warnall neighborhood. So they have determined that Midtown Brookside area, and then further south are two or were before their existence. These were two prime locations for them to serve people that want to eat American food. Let's look at their menu and their pricing. Okay, so we see their menu. We don't see the pricing per se. Let's look at the order now so we can actually look at the pricing. Okay, so we see here their pricing scheme and what they're featuring. Common food items in American cuisine and their take on that. So you can start to kind of take some guesses as to how they um, make themselves unique within the broader category of American cuisine. Um, I'm going to go ahead and say that this pig butt mac is a specialty of theirs, and we can see the corresponding price. So this can help us determine, if I want to open up a restaurant that has the success of Charlie Hooper's or aspires towards that success, maybe something that we do is have our own version of mac and cheese. Maybe include some kind of protein that isn't that commonly found or is commonly found, and then we present this in a way that speaks to our unique identity as a business. So there's a lot that you can kind of start to ideate around when you start exploring within A to Z databases and then go outside of A to Z databases and explore further on businesses, and in this case, a restaurant business's website. Um, this, again, was really just to help, hopefully help those of you that are at the beginning of looking for information to help you with market research and assessing the local Kansas City market. This is just to help hopefully orient some of your thinking and start to help you think of ways to address important things to consider as you start your journey and as you determine what your marketing strategy is going to be. Um, your approach to market research and the information that you pay the most attention to can absolutely influence and help shape your eventual marketing strategy. I'm going to go ahead and close out the window with Charlie Hooper's Bar and Grill and get back to A to Z. Uh, I want to point out one last thing and show you the nearby businesses. This category here, or this section within the A to Z search result entry for Charlie Hooper's, um, it helps to give a lay of the land, a lay of the hyper local environment so that if you are so that you can assess as far as your location goes, okay, if Charlie Hooper's has this type of success and I see that the nearby businesses cover fitness. I believe bar three is fitness, um, termite and pest control, a law office. I can start to take some guesses as to what the disposable income is, or the rough amount of disposable income, or at least willingness to spend within the hyper localized community that the Charlie Hooper's location exists in. And that can also help to kind of start to develop different customer profiles if you get that, if you're at that point. If you're not at that point, that'll come later. But this is again information to help you really assess, okay, what are the things that are working for Charlie Hooper's? And are those things that I want to work in my favor? And if those are things that I want to work in my favor, how can I make my situation a similar reality? And again, some things you don't have control over. Like, so maybe you don't have as much control over a location. Or maybe you do. And if that's the case, then it might make sense to consider locations that seem to have a population of people that have disposable income that create demand for businesses that fall within the profiles of the nearby businesses of Charlie Hooper. Or it could be getting too far in the weeds. It's really up to you to decide. And I know I said that was the last bit. Let me just very briefly mention the estimated annual expenditures. Anytime you're looking at revenue trend, you got to look at the expenditures because the revenue is not telling you everything. As you know, you're trying to make a profit. Restaurant business is a very thin profit margin industry. So it looks like, based off of these estimates, Charlie Hooper is operating in the green. Yes, and we can see that reflected in the sales growth number or percentages that are listed underneath the revenue trend here. Sales growth from 2023 through 2024 was 5%, which is very solid. And that corresponds to a 2% growth in employees from 2023 to 2024. Um, Charlie Hooper's has been steadily adding more and more employees, which they had a huge jump, it seemed like, from 2021 to 2022. So they're hiring, which is great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. I'm going to stop sharing and take a moment to first thank all of you who have made it to this point. Thank you for listening to me talk at you through a screen. I'm going to briefly show you how you can schedule a meeting with me if you'd like to go through things one-on-one. So I got to share my screen again one more time. Um, we are on the Kansas City Library um, website homepage. To find where to schedule a meeting with me, we're going to go to lifelong learning and we're going to go to business and entrepreneurship right here. So as I mentioned before, if you are watching in one go, I mentioned that this page exists. This is essentially a LibGuide that provides information about the different resources that correspond to small business and entrepreneurship ideation and a little bit into operation as well. You can see for yourself the different topics that are covered here. Um, but to schedule an appointment with me, all you have to do is click this button right here to schedule an appointment, and it will take you to my scheduling link page. And you have the option between a 30-minute and a 60-minute meeting. Let's say you want to do a 60-minute meeting. You will see my availability. Let's look at Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. You will put your name. You'll put your email. If you have any additional people that you're adding, you can add their email address as well. You have the choice also between a virtual meeting through Microsoft Teams, an in-person meeting that is held at the Central Library downtown on the third floor, or for a phone call where I call you. Just please note with a phone call, we're a little bit limited because I'm not able to show you anything over a screen, but I can describe things. Then you will, if you would like to, you can supply a phone number to reach you at, but you definitely need to supply that if you're going to do a phone call. Um, there are some broad categories of um, assistance categories. So you'll select one or more of these options. If what you're seeking help with is not listed, you can go ahead and write what it is within the other box right here. And if I can't help you directly, hopefully I have resources that are relevant to what you're looking for as far as a referral. Um, and then we always want to know, I especially always want to know, how did you find out about um, business and grant search help? Um, so if you want to share that, well, we kind of require that. If you found out through this video, go ahead and say that. If you found out just browsing, go ahead and say that. Whatever it is, you'll put it in there. If there's anything additional that you feel is relevant or worth sharing, that is where you can include it right here. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And then if you want text message reminders, definitely feel free to input a phone number that receives text messages, because those that phone number will receive automatic updates. Okay. At the very end, when you're ready to schedule it, you will click on schedule event, and then all of that information will go to your email inbox. So this is for folks that are new to automatic scheduling. For folks that already know how to use this, again, don't worry about this piece. Again, my name is Hadiza Saadu. I'm here to provide one-on-one help. I share access to information. I share context for how to use the different databases. And I also work with people one-on-one to help bounce ideas and help provide a little bit of direction, just in the form of ideas and thoughts. I will also make a disclaimer and say I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not a tax expert, so I do not give advice. But if you'd like help, I am here. Thank you so much for your attention and your time today. I look forward to meeting with anybody that comes from this video. Have a great day.